Welcome, everybody, to our current energies discussion and forecast for September 2020. My name is Jona Bryndis, as you all know, and we always start the forecast with looking back. This is a very important discipline so that we can encourage our own inner system to work with this feedback, okay? And as we will learn here, especially in regards to incoming September energies, to increase the accuracy of our inner impulses. All right, this has to do with this active, conscious interacting with our higher self. How did this go for you in August? This actively participating in your life, going into a place of self-discovery, perhaps noticing a few things, the daily routines. We all have to change our daily routines, and it seems like it's going to stay this way. So we might as well come up with better practical, pragmatic ways, as I called it in August. This, by the way, will continue here for September. What were some of the things that changed for you, or that you've actively changed in August? It's not just enough to think, it's not just enough to feel. It's important to bring this into expression, to embody this. And a lot of times, guys, we literally have to hear ourselves say things out loud. Why do you think I do energy coaching for a living? This is not because the people who work with me don't understand what it takes. It's because they lack that integration, the actually doing that. That's why we're all here. That's what sacred self-healing is. And what it helps us to do is to not only reconnect with our own empathy and these higher vibratory goals and values that we have, but also to liberate ourselves from some of these boxed in views and perceptions and interpretations and conclusions, our opinions about things, right? By feeling this connectedness, this interconnectedness, we are realizing that everything is much more complex and has much more variety than it appeared to us before. It can help us to increase our own scope or perspective, and in that way become a helpful tool to increase our horizon, to increase our consciousness, to get to this self-discovery, this internalization of insights, all right, and to verify these things for yourself and not to just adopt what she says or what he says. All right. In this verified experience, these few people that you meet that are resonating on this higher vibratory wavelength, if you will, okay, that bring in the courage and the willingness to dive deeper, that will become most fulfilling for you, and also the ones that can help you to show you your way, your own refined way, not somebody else's way, your way, so that you can fully own and claim your insights and your expressions, your actualization of all of this as your own. And that's what community is about, namely recognizing that our energy is sacred and that we, even if we don't always see it or understand it, need to work with it. If we don't work with it, something or somebody else will. And you all know what this means. It doesn't mean that you're going to get infested by demons. We had the part one of this wonderful truth talk called Angels and Demons. It means that we get run over, that we externalize our power, and that we are no longer feeling we are participating in our own lives, that we become victims, guys. And that's, you can call this a demonic force, or at least it's a force that creates the fertile ground in you to get run over, to get remote controlled or mind controlled, or to get attracted into these toxic relationships that everybody talks about, or keep having those same repeats in your life where you feel resentful or where you feel taken advantage of. So injustice and betrayal, guys, can really only then affect you if you are not fully present in your life's path, if you are not owning your own sacred self, your own sacred space, and sharing your sacred space with someone who resonates with you on this similar frequency, to throw in a few energy lingos here. That creates a field, it creates an amplification. Now, mind porn, as I called it earlier, mentalization, and opinions, polarizations, can do that too, but they do that in a different way. Let's talk about this a little bit. How is sharing, opening up, empathy different from having opinions, being part of a team, arguing, fighting against something? How's that different? One separates me from others, and the other, where we share, even if we share a disagreement, you and I can completely disagree in our views, but we can still enter a space where we can share all that and where we can let the other be, and also be okay with, where we're at. Okay, so there's no imposing, there's no infringing there. There's no energetic push or pull there. Okay, so that's the main differentiation for you guys here. So if you feel attracted to certain groups or you want to be part of communities, then pay attention to that. Does it feel like you are being imposed upon or infringed upon? Do you feel like you have to give up something, or you cannot be yourself, or you're being judged? Or do you feel free to think, free to develop, free to change your perspective, free to make corrections, free to speak truth? That is one of the main discernments here that I see is still a problem for a lot of people. Like, how can I even discern if a person or a relationship or a workplace or a community, if that's conducive for me and to where I want to go? It's very important that we become more aware of this, because September is asking us to become very clear about where we want to go with what we have, with these insights that we have, with these feelings that we have, with our consciousness. Right? It wants to bring this into expression. Okay, if we're not expressing it, then it stays in the unmanifested, so to speak, and it's okay to develop these things. So September is a month that helps us to refine things, to correct things, and to integrate things. But we have to actively work on it, because if we don't actively work on it, if we don't go into this reality check, into this inventory, and some of these morning routines or daily routines that you mentioned in the beginning can help with this. Yeah, to contemplate, to seek stillness, to connect within, and maybe just observe so that we can make corrections. That's the big theme here of September. It brings in the awareness for our sacred self, but most and foremost, guys, and this is huge, it shows us, it makes it tangible for us, the interconnection with everything, the interconnectivity, and with it also the intercontextuality. Those are like really big words, but really what it means is that all is connected, and that there are bigger cycles and bigger things that we can't even see, because in our microscopic view, say, of our daily assessment, or many people only make a yearly assessment once a year, maybe on the 31st of December, they come up with a list of New Year's resolution. That's the only time where they ever actually go into this inventory. Most people never actually go into this honest self-reflection because they are afraid of what they discover there. So how can we then make adjustments? How can we change and respond to outer changes? How can we physically integrate things if we are not really aware where we're standing? This has to do with standing in our center, being present. How can we harmonize things if we're not fully aware? If we are pulled into our inner polarization and our dualism, right, then all we can feel or see is what we like and what we dislike, our sympathies and antipathies. That's why I talked so much about this in the past months. Our likes and dislikes, no, I don't want pain. Yes, I want pleasure. Okay. And those are basically the fundamentals of our undeveloped ego. I say undeveloped because the ego is here to secure our survival. It operates on the most core and fundamental levels of our needs, but it cannot really reflect the needs that we develop when we have a higher level of consciousness, right? And therefore, it's impossible to feel fulfillment or happiness or even success with our goals if we allow this undeveloped part to run the show, to drive the bus. All right, so there's a lot of problems that come in with our ego. Not all are problems, but a lot of these undeveloped, not so sophisticated and unreflected things in us pull us into literally also the undeveloped and immature parts of ourselves. That's why when we act on our ego, we always also look like 3-year-olds. Doesn't mean that we are underdeveloped. It just means that parts of us still need refinement. They need development. They need untanglement. We need to become aware of the complexity of things and maybe work on the way we see things, our perspective. So it all starts with changing our perspective. I want to direct your attention also to other interconnectivity and intercontextuality, namely to the bigger things, the cosmic things, right? The macroscopic things, away from our microscopic things. Because look, how old do we get? We get like what, 80, 85 years. How many of these years do we consciously observe? Well, I want to say out of these 85 years that we can expect to live, maybe 65 or 60 years are really conscious. Okay, not to say that we are dumb or don't have intelligence when we're young. It has nothing to do with intellectual or cognitive intelligence. It has something to do with the full self-awareness. And in this time frame of 60, 65 years, we can observe certain things. So that's why, if we consciously, actively work on our development, then of course we move towards wisdom. All right, we become wiser when we are older, become more integrous when we're older. We've seen things, we've been there. All right, we've checked this off, we've gotten a t-shirt. And so, it's easier for us to discover patterns, to see the repeats, to understand some of our karmic stuff. And we're no longer sort of wrapped up in the experience. We are much better observers, and if we have consciously trained this ability to observe and to witness, then we can actually be the witnesser of life in our old age, all right, where we begin to see how it's all connected with another. But what about anything beyond that, beyond 60 or 80 years? What do you know about cycles that happen every 100 years or every 400 years or every 16,000 years? What do we know about those cycles? Not much, huh? Where can we learn about it? This is a question for you. Where can we learn about these greater cycles and rhythms in life here on our planet, but also in the whole universe? Where do we turn to learn more about that? Where do you go? All right, you go into nature. Very good answer. Yeah, what do you learn from nature? So let's look a little deeper into this. Let's look a little deeper into nature. Let's talk about the earth. It provides us with minerals, it provides us, or nature itself, with sort of the nurturing it needs to grow. Okay. So what about this? What are the effects on the earth itself? The simplest effects on the earth, as you all know, is climate, right? Seasonal climate change, climate zones. It shapes the vegetation, but also, of course, the larger forces, right, like gravitation, like moving Earth tectonics, but also electromagnetics, as well as overall mineral content, seasonal, but also cosmic influences. Okay, and this is something that is very important here to understand in conjunction with ourselves, because we all know, kinda, that we are connected to Earth. We know that we are part of Earth or of nature itself. We know that Earth itself, the planet itself, is not just some imaginatory or intellectual celestial object. It's something that we feel underneath our feet every day. And it can help us to triangulate ourselves. It can help us to ground ourselves, but it can also influence us. Yeah. And there's micro and macro effects on Earth and from Earth towards us. And I want to just bring this to your awareness. I'm going to go deeper into this in the weekly energy tips, how these micro effects, how, for example, the composition of Earth, the mineral content, okay, how this can locally, geographically influence the energy and thus influence people. But we all know the importance of Earth for us, and the geographics of that through seasons and climate zone and vegetation. Air. What about air? Well, right now we are talking a lot about air, aerosols, what flies in the air with COVID, with having to wear face masks. We're talking about air in regards to climate change, carbon dioxide. I'm talking about, how the global warming is caused by humans, all right, by the increased carbon dioxide content in the air that we are expelling through all the machines and engines that we have, but simply also through perhaps overpopulation. All right, and it has an impact on us. Yes, we're seeing hurricanes, we're seeing typhoons, we're seeing these weather patterns, severe weather patterns right now that have to do with temperature in the air, also in the water, of course, and how the air moves, how it flows, and it impacts us. obviously also air quality in and of itself impacts us and our breathing. All right, so these are very fundamental topics right now. Okay, how our breathing affects our health and our well-being. What most people are not aware of is that the earth itself has a constant rise and fall of its surface as well. It just doesn't happen that fast. It happens in maybe 60,000 year cycles. The last time the earth was at its highest in expansion, like, was in 1250. That's when, since then, the earth's surface is slowly lowering. So it is possible, for instance, that the increase in water level is just simply the effect of the earth's breathing. We don't know this. Science doesn't know this, guys. Science doesn't really look past, the things that can be observed, well, and replicated ever since we've started measuring things. This isn't really that long. Science, as a discipline is really only accepted since 400 years, 450 years, guys. This isn't a long time if we're looking at the cycles, the cosmological cycles here that we are exposed to. All right, and so the conclusions, for instance, that the climate change that we are observing is caused by humans or by our engines is a hypothesis. It's not even proven. We don't know that yet. We don't have enough timelines that we have observed to know this. We know that if we look at these different layers, in our earth, especially in mountain areas and where there's mining, that there is a constant rise and fall. Science is not very precise there because it isn't really observing things long enough to really know what these bigger influences are. Now, if we look at water, for instance, it becomes even more obvious. Water is influenced, well, by temperature, we know this, but it's also influenced by the moon. The ebb and flow, the tide, is influenced by the proximity to the moon. Okay, that means that there's a much larger influence, and that creates a constant rhythm here on our planet in regards to water. Then we have the whole sort of water household on our planet with monsoon and the equator areas that creates a big part of our weather cycles. Well, maybe the climate change is affected by much bigger things than we know yet. We know that the moon, and this is one of the very few that has been observed for longer, that the moon creates 18 and a half, 19-year cycles in harvest. So a lot of this lost wisdom about these larger cycles, the farmer's almanac or the 100-year calendar, can still be found somewhere buried in agriculture, but is poo-pooed as non-scientific. However, there are some wisdoms that we all kind of intuitively agree with. Namely, for instance, that rainwater is living water, has a different effect on plant growth, on our bodies, or even washing our laundry. This cannot be explained by science. It can only be observed, guys. And we have to understand that there's a difference between a phenomenon, what we can observe, and the conclusion. We're observing lots of changes right now here on our planet, and a lot of people are concerned about this. And they're concluding that it's all, coming from, I don't want to go there right now, different conspiracy theories. okay, including man-made changes. But what if we just increase our perspective here a little bit and zoom out and look into the larger connection, how water is influenced by energies, for instance, how water molecules store information. One of the biggest revelations that I've had as a chemist was the storage of information in water, and how through literally our breath and our emotions, how we are influencing the rainwater and the water stored not just in our own bodies, but in our direct environment, that then evaporates again, that then gets carried miles and miles away over the oceans and rains back down and evaporates again. How these bigger energy cycles, okay, how they all are connected. And I'm not just talking about, the water crystals and how we can program water. No, there is a ton of information stored in water, guys. And there's a record in water as well. And then what about fire? Fire is an element here, is the one that brings warmth. Okay, we simulate fire through combustion engines. All right, we simulate fire through or with electricity. It's just a different form of it. Okay, but fire is also the light. It's also the light that comes in through the fire of the sun that influences us here every day. There is a very strong body of evidence that is pointing at the direction that these severe weather patterns that we are observing, the Earth changes, that they are part of larger cycles, guys, that are connected not just with the sunspots and sun flares. We know, for instance, that the CO2, the carbon dioxide content in our air, has to do with sunspots. We know that the Earth's electromagnetic field has to do with sun flares. We know that the spectrum of light has to do with both, and also, of course, the proximity and so forth. So the light spectrum has changed. The electromagnetic field of the Earth is changing. Yes, and the Earth is breathing, like I explained this earlier. So there's a lot of factors here that we are not entirely aware of. We might be heading towards, another ice age. For all I know, we can expect a new ice age. Not a big ice age, but like a mini ice age in approximately 30 years. And it was always preceded by the Earth warming up temporarily. This kind of happens in every 400 years. So what if it is the sun that is causing all these Earth changes? What do we know? Science doesn't. What are the planetary influences on minerals, on water, on our light, on our air? This is the new science here that you will experience in the next era here. This is holistic science. Okay, looking at the larger perspective, looking at larger timelines, understanding the interconnection, and yes, things such as astrology and astronomy, all these poo-pooed semi-pseudosciences, as they've been called, energy work, they will all be integrated. Because those are the only records and the only phenomena that humans have been observing for as long as there is recorded sort of memory, that will change our way of seeing things. And the reason why I did this big excursus with you guys right now here is to show you something, to show you how limited your opinions are, to show you how little we all know and how important it is to overcome these preconceived ideas and programs in us. Yes, our nervous system, our brain is wired to recognize patterns, but how do we know that the patterns that we are recognizing are not some pre-chewed or manipulated or preconceived things that are just stored in our collective unconscious? These archetypes of being. Well, we don't. The only way to break through this is through this transformational learning, this meta learning that I call the self-discovery, executing, integrating your free thinking, all right, and showing to yourself that you actually have a consciousness. That consciousness can pick up on a broader bandwidth. It's so much bigger, guys, than even science makes it look. You know this, I started out as a scientist. And the more I knew about the origin of life and atoms and how this is all affecting another, the more I realized how little we know. And the more I started to trust in the ability to perceive things through my own consciousness and begin to merge it together, to think, feel, to develop something like a heart mind that allows you for a new way of learning. Okay, and this is something we can all look forward to, guys. Right now, I just want to warn you, I just want to caution you to not buy into any of these preconceived ideas that are floating around there, that are polarizing us, that are creating these two teams, okay, where people go into resistance and fight against another, what is righter and what is wronger. The perspective that determines the context. Amanda's sharing there's a belief and a teaching booming right now that humans have come from a particular constellation and that there are beings here from now from that place. This stuff is fanatical and in the collective right now. Well, these kind of theories about where human life originated have been cruising around forever. But it is, regardless of what planet we have originated, pretty safe to say, okay, that something has brought us into existence, okay, and that is for sure. And it wasn't us, it wasn't ourselves. So no matter how much our ego insists on being the originator of our own existence, it's not. Okay, and so exploring some of these alternative thoughts, like, well, maybe we didn't even come from this earth. It's quite all right. But again, if I'm not able to resolve some of the most practical questions in my own life, how important is, spending energy on that, reading up on stuff like that, or, entertaining the thought that comes with that, namely, and this is again here one of these discernment tools that you need to heed, what is it saying? It's fear mongering. It's increasing uncertainty. It's creating even more externalization in people and making people even less self-aware. It's hijacking people's attention into all these different theories. I'm not saying that there aren't civilizations, other civilizations on other planets or other beings. There's a lot of aliens, if you will, that exist in etheric realms that can be observed, not just by me. Thousands, hundreds, thousands of people can observe them. But what meaning do they have? What meaning do they have for our life? What meaning does it have to, discuss whether we are from the Pleiadians or Sirius or wherever? We're here right now, okay? And so were our ancestors, at least, for 200 generations minimum. So we have to find the 0 point here in that, you know, the middle, okay, and always triangulate back to ourselves. How does this affect me? Not in an egotistical way, but in the way of, is this even practical? Yeah, so I opened up the perspective here, you know, and to not come to these polarized conclusions. So let's talk about September energies. Let's move into the forecast here and how this will affect us, this incoming September energy. I've already published the sort of the write-up about September energies. You can look this up in your email. If you're not part of my email list, then please sign up for it. The main energy here for September, which I called Sacred Self for those who did the energetic adjustment, the energetic tune-up session with me, and interconnectedness for the forecast here, is correction, is refinement and correction, is this reality check that needs to happen in regards to our perspectives and how narrow they actually are. And this has to do with this revelation of truth, this confrontation of untruth that I keep talking about, that is bringing in a larger context through what is untrue. Okay, so we are kind of forced right now to let go of our preconceived ideas. I mean, there's always hardliners and fanaticism that will last a little longer, but for those of us who actually live in the here and now and want to expand on their consciousness and want to be an active participant in their self-discovery and self-mastery journey, this is the time of, well, letting go of the restraints of the past, letting go of preconceived, boxed in ideas, and recognizing that adjustment and correction and being able to respond to all these changes can only happen if we go into this very pragmatic physical integration. Now, physical integration is not just our body, it's everything in our 3D manifestation, what matters, what truly matters to us, what's truly essential to us. And when we begin to get a glimpse of this larger interconnection, which is right now also spurred by this huge cosmic influence that we are all feeling, especially energetically sensitive here through this etheric anomaly that I warned everybody about here in these last energy tips, week 35. So we are currently experiencing something like an etheric disturbance, or anomaly is a little more neutral, that triggers this energetic sensitivity in us, that triggers our ability to peek into the etheric realm, the part of us, of all of us here, that displays sort of this mirror world of perception that really activates our third eye vision. And there's a bit of a problem there when we try to harmonize our inner world with our outer world, namely that what we are discovering here in our inner world is not all that nice, is not all that happy. Okay, like our ego in its sort of fake positivity. Oh yeah, if we just cope a little more, if we just, you know, get by and stay in our comfort zone, everything is going to be fine. All right. When we actually allow ourselves, when we open ourselves up for this more unseen inner world of ourselves, we recognize that there are a lot of influences there as well that we cannot deal with. And this is part of the reason why we see such a strong impact on mental health right now. Okay, there's a huge sort of influx of people having delusions or thinking they're having delusions or not being aware of the fact that they're having delusions, and people who are growing into their energetic sensitivity, really beginning to see these greater forces around us. This is why I've dedicated the Truth Talk here today to angels and demons. There are already 2 recordings called Forces of Light and Dark, 2 parts, and we're going to have a second part for angels and demons, because what we are experiencing here, and you can see this also in media and everywhere, this surge of books and movies and TV series about angels and demons and the supernatural and witches and vampires and demon slayers and spiritual warriors. Okay, this doesn't just come from nowhere. This is part of where our collective is developing into, all right? And in September, it's going to be very impactful for all of us in the way that we will feel confused. We will feel something like a spiritual confusion. We no longer really know how to triangulate ourselves. And that's why I talked here in this pre-session, in this discussion that we had about some of the practical aspects of increasing our perspective and letting go of these restraints of the past, and also letting go of the mind porn that some of us engage in through intellectualizing all of this. It has to be very practical. Integration into 3D, all right, the physical integration means that we are aware of the effects on us on the physical level, emotional level, mental level, social level, financial as well, spiritual and energetic level. All right, that's why I always separate these forecasts and the energy tips that I do weekly for the Patreon supporters and heart warriors into these different categories. You're going to have to get used to this now. You're going to have to adjust to this. You have to refine our energetic perceptivity. And we need a practical approach, guys. This is really, really important. In the next energy tips video, I will introduce a roadmap to a more conscious self-mastery. But you guys here are already part of the Sacred Self-Healing course and the program behind it and the community, the free daily meditations that everybody can go to, and some of the affiliates that have developed out of this with energy yoga and energy discussions and so forth. Guys, share these communities with others. Anything that is conducive for the development of your larger perspective and that helps you to clarify, to verify your perception and your self-awareness, all right, might not be everybody's cup of tea, because it is challenging to a degree, yeah, to go into this vulnerability, or what we perhaps perceive as something that is weak. But it becomes our shield as soon as we recognize the power of interconnectedness and the power of free thinking and free will. All right, so to keep this short here with the forecast, September is bringing in all these cosmic energies, all right, that are new to many people and therefore very challenging. So it triggers a lot of the scoping that I've mentioned before and erratic behavior. Okay, why does it do that? Because collectively we are experiencing this never before seen polarization, and also this never before seen complexity of how our world in this age of globalization works, how everything is interconnected. And I'm not just talking about climate change, I'm also talking about supply chains. All right, so here in this month, you will begin to see problems with supply chains. They're already there, but if you don't, run a production company, you don't know this. You don't know that there's an aluminum shortage. You don't know, that there are problems with certain foods coming here in these next 6 months. Okay, you will see this though as a consumer in the way that the prices for these goods are going to be much higher than they used to be. So this larger perspective, seeing these larger cycles and rhythms, is something that eludes the collective. So the collective isn't, as like our societies aren't really able to respond to this yet. Okay, they are still in the middle of this polarization and fighting against another, and misconceiving a lot of this sort of kernel of truth, like say in social justice, emancipation, the need for more stewardship for our planet, the need for more awareness, the need for a more effective working together. The misconceptions of that are part of this revelation, guys. All right. So physically, it's for us here with our own body, this impulse to integrate more, to embody more, will mostly play out in these super sort of anal healthy health nut ways, okay, and also becoming more aware of the breath of life. Go back to the true self-talk called Reconnecting with the Breath of Life if you would like to have more information about this and what kind of energy work techniques I recommend. Now, emotionally, and this is the immaturity and the sort of missing refinement here, the missing consciousness in the collective, the way it affects many people is that it triggers their inner child, the unresolved childhood traumas or childhood programs and conditionings. A lot of people this month will have to deal with mommy and daddy issues, with karmic family problems, but also with their resolutions. Now, the way this comes forward for us here, guys, and let's be very clear about this, is in form of our separation anxiety, in form of our depression, in form of our loneliness. All right, so there is a need to really work with these things, or else we feel so disconnected, so separated, okay, that we cannot feel the power of interconnectedness. Now, mentally, there's this really strong lack of observation right now, where people don't even take time anymore, where they're so ADHD through this bombarding, news flash everywhere, okay, that there's no contemplation about what you're actually hearing. Okay, so you got to understand that this conditioning to this fast pace and high complexity has left us without depth. Nobody's willing to listen to my videos if they are longer than 5 minutes. The mentalization of spirituality, guys, isn't integrating. It's completely separate from you as a spiritual being. It's mind porn. All right. So to overcome the separation fear, the separation anxiety, okay, and to feel that you're a part with your thoughts, with your thinking, feeling, with your willingness, okay, to explore and to learn, okay, and to go into this transformational learning, needs to be overcome first. We need to have courage, the courage to make decisions. September is a month where you need to come to conclusions of what you want to commit yourself to. Now, 2021 is going to be the year of choice, but right now, these 3 months here, okay, they are the ones where you can figure all this out. Okay, and September will show you things where you're like, I might have to rethink this. I might have to feel into this a little more. All right, so that you can actually know what you want to commit to. Okay, so it's very important here to apply discernment and not just talk about discernment. And especially something that I see here in this spiritual community that is rampant is this consuming of spiritual stuff, but not actually doing it. There's no translation. Okay, we talk about non-judgment, we talk about compassion, we talk about forgiveness, we talk about energy awareness, shifting our energy. And how successful are people in actually even remembering to breathe, remembering to clear, to connect, to integrate on a daily level? Not very successful. And that's because there's a block there. All right. And that plays out in our relationships, guys. So in September here, you're going to see some beautiful times. So the first 10 days are really, I mean, let's take the full moon that is coming in here right now with this strong etheric disturbance out of the equation. Okay. But till the 13th, of September, around the 9th and the 10th, wonderful times to engage into deeper relationships with people, and also to investigate your relationship with love itself, to define and refine love, and also what sex means to you in regards to love. And perhaps to go into this deeper observation, this deeper witnessing of connections with your partner or with a community. Okay. Communities, these social bubbles that I mentioned or that I predicted as the new mega trend here for the next 20 years, they're starting now. But we have to apply discernment as to what we are committing ourselves to, what we are, communing with. It's very important. Financially, guys, there's the time here around the 21st, 22nd till the 29th, brings in a lot of shocking financial stuff, betrayal, further revelations, and of course, the shocking truth of what all these shutdowns have done to our societies, and who's going to pay for it and how we're going to pay for it. So, yeah, latest then, you want to have a good financial planning, especially a plan for cash flow, how you can get money in. Now, spiritually, and this is again here why I have this positive and optimistic attitude towards all that is happening, is that we are forced to go into deeper levels of soul awareness. We are rediscovering the sacredness of ourself, the sacredness of nature too, the sacredness of divine masculine and feminine energies in us. And there is this divine order and divine timing that we can connect to now through these bigger cosmic influences. All right, and we will see things with new eyes. Anyone who goes into this active self-discovery and consciousness work will eventually have spiritual experiences. But he or she will have spiritual experiences coming from within him or herself, not as a say-so or a second-hand spiritual teaching or experience, or some channeling, or somebody who tells you what you need to do, or what your tarot cards or your numerology or your astrology tells you. Not that these can't be tools, but they are channeling things. And when you channel things, you cannot duplicate your own internalized connection and connectedness to the sacred self that you are, and the divine everywhere, can only happen through you witnessing this for yourself, and for you learning how to replicate this systematically, the pathway to spiritual enlightenment. Remember, the path is the way. Now, energetically, guys, I'll be honest with you, this is a really rough month. Okay, this integration talk all sounds nice and dandy, but that's a true task. All right, and without present moment awareness, without you checking in with yourself a couple times a day, It'll be rough, especially for those of us who are energetically sensitive. You'll have heart palpitations. You'll feel your nervous system go rampant. You'll feel really, really strong impact on your third chakra, on your solar plexus, pains in your chest, difficulties breathing. Your fourth chakra needs to expand. It needs to break through these blocks of perception. And your third eye, your sixth chakra, and these cosmic energies that are coming in through your crown chakra, they need to be tamed. They need to be regulated. You need to learn how to do this, or else you're going to have migraines or neck pain or stiffness in your whole entire body the whole month. Okay, so the tips here for energetic integration, as always, is, of course, engaging in everything that helps your body to integrate, but also, guys, mindfulness, meditation, soulfulness, really engaging, not just consuming spiritual stuff. You have to engage now. Spiritual specialness is characterized through thinking that you are spiritual, but it's a trap. All right. So more on that in the angels and demons truth talk from today, and the one part 2 next week, about how these forces of dark and light, these angels and demons, mess with us. For us here, it's important in September to wake up, to get out of our summer sleep, to stop wasting our energies like wildfire, okay, uncontrolled wildfire. We're telegraphing our sacred energy out there. And yes, there is a connection with sexual energies. This will be something that we'll be discussing here in the sacred self-healing community, how porn and masturbation and promiscuous sex and so forth, how that actually leads to our etheric become more susceptible to etheric attacks. This is a big thing here. Sorry for dropping this bombshell at the very end, but it's not just that wildfire. Us being like innocent fireflies that just sort of glean out our energy and burn out in the process, guys, is one of the biggest problems in the etheric realm right now, and we have to become aware of our powers, or else we will feel under the influence of these forces, these outer forces. Okay, and we'll have to fight our inner dragons more than we want to. Now, we'll have to fight our inner dragons anyway, but there's a huge difference if you do this voluntarily, if you feel this willingness that comes from knowing who you are, that gives you the courage to stand up for yourself and to claim yourself, to become your own true self authority. Or if you're being forced to defend yourself, and if you get pulled into your fear, into your specialness, into your separation anxiety or your materialism, or if you focus on external sources as your power, all right, or if you cut yourself off from your own inner feelings altogether and go into this numbness and coldness that so many people experience right now. Yes, these are the challenges here that September brings in, and as always here as part of this community, we'll dive deeper into all of this here throughout the month. So become part of this experience, self-healing, sacred self-healing community. Come to our free meditations, go join discussion groups, discern very clearly whether groups promote external power or inner power, whether it feels empowering to you, conducive for you, or whether it just hijacks your thoughts into more fear, into more injustice and victimhood, and more judgment or more specialness. Right? These are the dangers here of September 2020. All right, guys, thank you so much for being part of this community, and I wish you a wonderful September. Lots of self-awareness, lots of discernment, and lots of reclaiming yourself and the courage that comes with that. Bye.